time, I would like to introduce Mr. Alan Freeman. He is with the USDA Industrial Hemp Program, and he's going to give us an overview and some updates on the program. Mr. Freeman?
Sorry, I had to unmute myself there. Thank you for the opportunity to present information about the regulatory program for industrial hemp in the state of Missouri. Go through our basic regulatory information for producers, and then I've got a little bit of data from our annual reporting at the end of the presentation that go over briefly. Kind of shows where what producers reporting to to our regulatory authority at that time. So for our producers and for the general public, when it comes to general contact information, email is the best method to get a hold of the program. The program is currently staffed by myself. The email is hempprogram@mda.mo.gov. If you'd like to talk to somebody, you can give me a call at 573-522-0351. If I don't get back to you right away, I usually get back to you within a couple of business days. Just bear with me. Sometimes there's a lot of calls, messages return. So. Secondly, for registered producers and permit holders or certified samplers, any reporting that you do, please submit through the reporting.hemp@mda.mo.gov. It does simplify the process of going through identifying what needs to be collected or doesn't need to be collected from producers. Generally, I move it all into the same email if it comes into a different account. Just a brief summary of the regulatory authority for the agency. So the Missouri Department of Agriculture has regulatory authority for viable industrial hemp. Viable industrial hemp is hemp plant material capable of living or growing, such as seed and live plants. And it may include, but not limited to clones, cuttings, and seedlings. Again, industrial hemp is cannabis sativa L with a pre-harvest compliance test not exceeding 0.3% total THC. We do not regulate non-viable hemp products or hemp material. So once that crop has been tested compliant with the total THC of 0.3% or less, and harvested, then it's in a non-viable state, then it's considered publicly marketable product in Missouri, falls outside of our regulatory authority, and you can move it into commerce and do as you see fit. We do not have processor, extractor, handler, or transport licenses offered. We only regulate the viable side of the industry. And publicly marketable products may be regulated by other entities. So if you are producing and doing more vertical integration in your own operation, so you're making tinctures and products such as that, I encourage you to reach out to the Department of Health and Senior Services to see what kind of regulations they may have for those consumer products. Some producer updates. Producers should keep track of what's going on the industrial hemp program website. There's some updating that's going to happen over the next few weeks, but it's been maintained pretty well for the last few months. If you're a registered producer, permit holder, or even a certified sampler, please read the correspondence that comes from the program office, whether it be a mail or email. We try to minimize the amount of information we send out, but usually when we send it out, it's pretty important. We're still planning on sending out periodic reminders again this year at different times of the season for what to keep track of. And as always, if you have questions, go ahead and contact staff here at hempprogram@mda.mo.gov. Registration types, or some people refer to them as licenses. Applications for those are open year round. Annual renewal notices go out about 60 days prior to the renewal date. Anybody who has a license that will expire at the end of this month will probably be getting an email either tomorrow or Monday as a reminder that if we haven't heard anything from you at that point. But so 60 days prior, we mail out a hard copy renewal notice, and then about 30 days to 3 weeks prior to the renewal, we'll try to send an email out as a reminder. Okay. If you're sourcing seed and propules, again, they can be purchased from any Missouri agricultural hemp propule and seed permit holder, a supplier with a hemp license in another state or territory, or a supplier approved by USDA for international import. Missouri does not maintain an approved varieties list, and we do not require certified seed at this for industrial hemp production. Planting reports for producers. So those need to be submitted to the department within 30 days of planting. And we're looking at planting and its final production location. If you're producing seedlings in a greenhouse that are going to be transplanted out into a field, then within 30 days of your transplant to the field is when you would need to submit those planting reports, identifying where that lot is. There are Excel and PDF versions available on the website, so those should be handy. If you have a question about it, there's a how-to guide, or you can contact me. Also, planting must be reported to the Farm Service Agency. And I think as Elazar mentioned earlier today with regards to the data information, the better information we can provide to both FSA and the National Ag Statistics Service, it does help improve the data capture over time, along with any research data that's being requested out there. We're still looking at doing a no plant notification by August 1st. A no plant notification was allowed through a WUFU form last year. And what that helps is identify is which producers did not plant during the year, so we don't have to worry about tracking down a lot of information on them. If you do plant after that fact, it's fine. Just go ahead and send that lot of the planting reports in, and we'll keep track of it at that point. But it does help us plan for inspections and stuff throughout the fall. Other reporting requirements, lot reports. So each lot or variety in a contiguous area needs to be kept track of. It's similar to a crop notebook. This is a piece of information that's maintained in your records and must be maintained for 3 years after that crop's been harvested. But it is one of the pieces of paper or the documents we're going to be reviewing once we come on site. And we may request those as well if we need additional information sometime during the season, but we'll let you know in writing and probably by a phone call. Distribution and sales reports with regards to permit holders. That's another transaction information that's going to be there for viable materials. And then annual reporting. So this is a basic summary of how much was planted and harvested, destroyed. We send out those instructions in the fall. There was a little confusion in 2021 as USDA sent out their producer survey at the same time annual reporting was required. Finally got the last couple annual reports in last month, so was able to finish some data, which I'll provide later on here. But all those records are to be maintained for 3 years and should be available upon request. We'll notify you if we need them. There's always a lot of questions with regards to pesticide use on industrial hemp. So EPA has approved 58 products, and this was a list from February of this year that is linked here. But in Missouri, all products that are used in the channels of trade in Missouri must be registered with MDA. So that means if EPA has it registered, that company has to register it with the state before it can be used in Missouri crops. MU Extension did publish a list last year. I believe it's still up to date, that cross-referenced the EPA list along with the MDA registered pesticides. And you can also look up registered pesticides through the Mo Plant system and the apps here, or you can go to the Department of Agriculture's website, go to Plants and Pests, and look under the Pesticide Control Bureau. Inspections. So as part of your industrial hemp registration, whether the registration permit or certified sampler, you're going to be up for an inspection at least once in a 3-year term. We do schedule those out a couple weeks in advance. I do try to make sure we have multiple site visits during the day so we can conserve resources. So if we're going to Northwest Missouri, I'm going to find several folks in the same area so we can kind of hit several stops and get them done in the same day. It's essentially an audit of records. So we're going to be looking at your records. We'll walk through the crop with you if you just kind of see how things are going, have a conversation as to what's going on. Most of these inspections take an hour to an hour and a half. And then after that, we usually within a week to 2 weeks, we'll send you a letter identifying how that inspection went, if there's any additional information needed, and leave you with what we might need at the time, and then send you an email with a follow-up. Excuse me. So compliance sampling. Looks like from the research Elazar had listed, it looks like most of our producers understand compliance sampling. If you have questions, our information is on our website, or you can call me and we can have a conversation about it. Each lot must be sampled within 30 days prior to harvest in accordance with the MDA sampling protocol listed on the website. The lot's going to be that group of plants in contiguous area, the same strain. You can harvest immediately after that compliance sampling has been done, but that compliance sample has to be done by a certified industrial hemp sampler. If you haven't completely harvested within that 30-day window, you can you'll reform a new lot or redefine it as a new lot and then resample, and then you have another lot that you can work with from that point forward. Excuse me. Certified samplers. So we've been very happy with the certified sampler program. USDA has actually adopted our model, as well as several other states have gone to certified sampler programs modeled off what we started in the country with. So these are third-party individuals who are hired by the producers. They are not employees of the department. They don't represent the department. They're not inspectors or contractors. Kind of falls under the same premise of a pesticide applicator that is contracted to come out and spray for pests. Only certified samplers, you have a private party treaty with them in order to collect industrial hemp compliance samples. So those samplers are limited from collecting samples that are for registrations in their name, in their employer's name, or for which they're a key participant. Certified samplers do have training materials on our website. There's also an exam that they have to take. It's an online exam, and we do monthly exams on that. It's the first week of the month. That will send out an email with a link for it. And there is an application of $50. If you have a past exam, we'll send a letter out with a pre-application in it. And then the certified sampler candidate can then send that back into it, and then we'll list them on the website. The listing on the website is on our main industrial hemp page, and it's they are broken out, or excuse me, they are sorted by county, so it's easier to keep track of where they may be in relation to you. Testing laboratories. So Missouri producers can select any testing laboratory that meets the qualification of a 17025 accreditation. That's an ISO accreditation. At the end of 2022, federal regulations will formalize the requirement that those laboratories must also be DEA registered. So as of this year, you still have the same labs you used last year that were 17025 compliant. At the end of 22, going into 23, those labs will need to be registered with the DEA as well. So if they're not already registered and it's a lab you like working with, it may not hurt to have that conversation with your lab and let them know that you'd still like to use them in the future. Then they need to meet that requirement in 23. Labs are supposed to be reporting to USDA as well, along with the testing requirements. Basically, you're looking for, you can use any lab that meets that requirement and then meets the testing requirements and then meets your business needs. We don't require you to use specific laboratories. We have labs across the country we've gotten results from. And in the last year, we've started receiving compliance samples from some of the medical marijuana labs as well, as they are starting to meet that 17025 compliance. Testing factors for compliance are determined by the total THC of 0.3%. That's going to be determined on either a decarboxylated delta-9 reading or a calculation of delta-9 plus a THCA with a multiplier on it. Ensure your labs are providing you a measurement of uncertainty on the certificate of analysis. So it's a lab calculated error, and it does provide you a little bit of room to work with if you're pretty close to the 0.3 mark. Each lab will have a different measurement of uncertainty, and it's going to be based on what they've determined based on their lab testing processes. When we look at the acceptable hemp THC level, just kind of look at how that measurement of uncertainty works here. In this particular case, we have lot 1. Lot 1 has a compliance test comes back about a 0.35, but it has a measurement of uncertainty that goes about a 0.06, I believe it is. And so it's a 0.29 to 0.41 test result. So makes it a compliance result. Same with A2, its primary test result comes back below the 0.3, so we're good to go. In this particular case, lot A3, the test result is above the 0.3%, and the measurement of uncertainty is also above the 0.3%. So in that particular case, that that is a non-compliant test and would have to go through either remediation or destruction. So compliance test results are going to be less than or equal to 0.3% on that total THC. You need to submit those test results to the department within 7 calendar days of your receipt of it. So if the laboratory is sending you a PDF document, you can forward that on to us with the COA in it. If they're sending you a portal to go into, please make sure you download those PDFs onto your drive and then forward them to us in an email is sufficient. We've had a few forward the results ends up being the resulting link, and then we can't access the information. Once that crop is then harvested and no longer viable, it may enter commerce and is no longer regulated by the department. Products themselves, again, may be regulated by other programs or agencies or entities, depending on the use. If you aren't sure who that is, you can send me a question about it, and I can either refer it on to the next person that may be eligible or provide you their contact information. For non-compliant test results then, which is going to be anything that exceeds the 0.3%, you're going to submit your test results within 7 calendar days. The producer can request the lab to retest the sample already in their possession, and that's to ensure that the lab error wasn't large enough to actually be counted for in the second result. Or if you don't go through a retest at that level, then it's considered a hot lot, and that lot must be remediated or then destroyed. So for remediation, if the pre-harvest sample exceeded the 0.3%, the lot may be eligible for remediation. So in that particular case, there's 2 methods. There's homogenization or destruction of the floral material. Homogenization, you're going to grind up the entire lot, your stems, stalks, leaves, and floral material all into one biomass, kind of like the image here. I think a couple of producers last year got a wood chipper and used a wood chipper as an opportunity to create a biomass. Or you can destroy floral material, which in the case of a fiber field, that would be cut the fiber down, let it rot in the field for a couple of weeks, and then you have a compliant sample test pulled off that. Resampling must occur by a certified sampler again. They're going to pull that compliant sample for you, and then once that's been sealed up, you can send it off to the lab that you choose to have do your testing. If the remediation test comes back as above a 0.3%, then we're going to have to look at lot destruction, and then we'll go through the destruction orders. If it's compliant, so it comes back at a 0.3% or less, then the eligible materials may enter commerce and are no longer regulated by the department. The products, again, may be regulated by others. You cannot use the seeds to replant, though. That is the limiting factor provided on the seed side of the equation there. That compliance test, when you do submit that back to us, you'll, especially on remediation, there's a remediation report that you'll fill out and submit as well, so that way we have that documentation. When it comes to the destruction, we will issue an order. We'll have a conversation before we get to that point. We'll have a conversation about what your options are, and when we get to the order of destruction, there'll be a letter mailed by certified mail. It takes about 3 days when it's certified mail to get to you. Then you'll have 15 days from the date of the letter in order to get the destruction completed and certified. So the producer will complete the destruction by an approved method. Those methods are listed in the destruction protocol, and then you'll have somebody from Missouri State Highway Patrol certify that destruction. The contact information for destruction certification will be on that letter, and so it'll be able to wrap all that information up. And then you'll submit the destruction report back to the department, as well as a copy will stay with the Highway Patrol officer, and you'll keep one for your records as well. By the time we get to this point in the process, it's important to remember reach out if you have questions on the compliance sampling or testing information. The sooner we can address items, we have more options available to us at that time. Elazar had mentioned some program data, so finished up our program summary data. So I've got a little bit of data I'm going to share with you today. And then I'm hoping that we can get our document posted on the website here and by the end of the week or early next week that kind of breaks out the entire year, along with some comparisons from year to year. So for this, I've got two charts on here. The left-hand side is the registration types between 2020 and 2021. So in 2020, we had issued 207 producer registrations, 78 industrial hemp, agricultural hemp propagule and seed permits, and then 80 certified industrial hemp samplers. 2021, we had 63 producer registrations issued, 11 propagule and seed permits, and 8 certified samplers. In this particular case, we had about 115 renewals. So we ended the year 2021 with 178 producer registrations, 48 certified or 48 agricultural propagule and seed permits, and then 51 certified samplers. And that netted out to a reduction of 24% of total licenses. It was 14% reduction year over year for producers, 38% reduction in the propagule seed permits, and then 36% reduction in the certified samplers. The right-hand chart is the acres registered, and that's going to be, as you're aware, when we register a parcel, we're registering the entire parcel that a person owns, so they can plant anywhere on that parcel once it's been registered. In 2020, we had 24,303 acres that were registered. We added 4,187 acres in 2021, but we closed out the year of 2021 with 21,826 registered acres for production. On the agricultural hemp propagule and seed permit side, we had 4,285 acres registered in 2020, 319 additional in 2021, with a net registered for permit sites of 2,673 acres. So we have seen a little bit of a reduction there. Producer registration acres were down 10% year over year. And again, the 37% reduction on the permits matches up with the number of registrations for permits that went down. Excuse me. Now here's a big hairy chart for you. Lots of information to go with. So we've got a section here that we've got the 2020 versus 2021. Elazar had information from FSA, and it's important to have FSA recording. All this data was from annual reports submitted by our producers. So in 2020, we had 811 acres that were planted. 2021, we nearly doubled that to 1,514 acres. So there was a 703 acre increase. So we had an 86% increase, or almost 87% increase in total acres. Now the outcomes of the lots are kind of the meat and potatoes of where things are going. So when we look at compliance, out of those 811 acres, we had 557 acres that tested compliant. In 2020 and 2021, there were 1,103 acres, and then ended up being 97% more acres that were tested for compliance. If you look by percentages, it was a 4% increase year over year that were compliant then. On the non-compliance side, we had 71 acres in 2020 that were non-compliant and ordered for destruction. In 2021, we had 2.75 acres, which was 0.18% of planted acres. Added this from doing a little math on it over time. This is a pretty nice little piece of statistic. So compliance testing, this is taking into account all the acres that were submitted for compliance testing, being compliant and non-compliant. Last year, we had 88.63% of acres that were tested for compliance, tested compliant with the 0.3% or less. We saw a nice increase this year. So 99.75% of acres that were tested for compliance in 2021 passed. So they were compliant lots that ended up going into commerce or moved on. Producers indicated that on the non-harvest side of the equation, we went from 179 acres of non-harvestable crops in 2020 to 413 this year. A little higher percentage than in 2020, but I think it's still pretty close in the margins. And we had a little bit of carryover from one year to the other. So the carryover of 2 acres from 2021 will count in the 2022 numbers when we report this fall. Intended use, another area of interest. So in 2020, we had 302 fiber acres that were planted. And in 2021, we were at 698 acres. And according to FSA numbers back in the fall, we were ranked number 2 in fiber acres planted from the October reporting that FSA had listed on their website. So that accounted for 395 additional fiber acres, which was 131% increase in acres year over year. And it accounted for a 9% change in the difference in percentages if you look at the percentages of acres going to different areas. Floral CBD was also very high this year. We had 375 acres in 2020, 729 acres in 2021, accounting for 48% of this past year's crop. It was pretty big increase again, but percentage-wise, it didn't increase year over year quite as much on a percentage basis as it did as the fiber acres did. Floral CBG acres were down from 73 to 5. Grain was down. We had 5 acres identified as planted for grain last year to not 0 acres in 2021. And then for seed, we went up from 56.9 acres to 67 acres in 2021. And propagules identified for planting for propagules only was 1.26 acres in 2020 to 2.24 acres in 2021. So all in all, some pretty interesting data to see how it changes. We'll see how 2022 goes. If you have questions or anything throughout the planting season and growing season on the regulatory side, please feel free to reach out and let me know. And then if you're running into plant pest issues or anything along those lines, by all means, I would encourage you to reach out to your extension folks through Lincoln or through University Extension